In this tutorial, I'll be showing you to use the shape layer with add-on options, and also how to combine multiple compositions into one. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new composition. I'm going to say layer, maybe trim path. And maybe zigzag. Those are the two options that I'm gonna show you. Zigzag, okay. And I'm gonna keep these settings at 5 seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and say okay. I'm gonna create my layer, new shape layer. I'm gonna go ahead and use the pen tool. Make sure there is no fill, and simply draw a line here. And I have 25 pixels. I want to keep it in white, and I'm going to go ahead and use the drop down menu, and then you can see this add-on tab. Every time you see an arrow, that means there are more options. So I'm going to go ahead and actually first use trim path. And one of the principles of animation is that anytime that you want to animate something over time, you have a stopwatch with a start and end key point, basically where you can keyframe your animation. So for something to animate, you need a minimum of 2 keyframes for each attributes, like the start or the end. So I'm going to go ahead and choose start and end, and the most important thing is your first keyframe. If you want to animate something over time, you want to reveal something, you want to change the end keyframe to 0. Simply click on it and make sure it's set to 0. Then you want to go to a different place in time, and then you just want to change the end keyframe to 100. So basically that's what it's gonna look like. And then maybe I'm gonna add another attribute to this, and this time I'm going to actually want to go back to use these arrow keys to navigate between these keyframes. I'm going to choose my add-on, and this time I'm going to choose zigzag, and automatically you can see some movement because by default it does have like some, you can see that it's like the size and the segments are already sort of set. I'm going to go ahead and change that to 0, 0, and make sure you keyframe it. And then from here I'm going to go maybe to the 30 seconds, and I'm going to choose maybe 30 and maybe 50. Actually this, so you can kind of see. And then if I wanted to animate snow, I can click shift on these things and move it over here. Kind of see that this animates, starts to shake, and starts to sort of does that movement thing. So, and I'm gonna go ahead and actually add like a title card to this. I'm gonna highlight these keyframes, move it a little further in, highlight these, move it a little further in, and here I'm just gonna make a new layer, text layer, and here I'm gonna write shape, or what is it, trim and zigzag. Okay, I can come back here and drag over the number to reduce the font size. Trim pad. So if you want to do, I'm gonna double click here to access the thing. So I'm gonna say shape, layers, return, and then maybe I want to center justify these, highlight both of the text, and then center justify. I'm just like Illustrator or Photoshop. I can just drag it here. So let's say I want to identify like what each of these selections are. I'm gonna go back to maybe over here. I think that's where I started the path. Maybe just before that. If you highlight your layer by clicking on it, and if you choose option right bracket or on Mac, or control right bracket on a PC, you can trim that path so you can see it, and then you can see what the effects we're going to see, and then we can just jump in to. I'm going to actually make this smaller. So this would be shape layer. Okay, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to change my composition setting to actually maybe 20. Well, you know what, actually no, I'm just going to leave that as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new composition. And then I'm going to say shape layer. This one is going to be wiggle. And I'm going to come back here. I don't know, this error message is kind of annoying. I'm going to come back here and click on my text layer, because I'm going to reuse that, copy it, go back to my shape layer, paste it. And then I can just double click inside of that and then choose trim path. This one is going to say wiggle. So now I'm going to make a new shape layer, move this to the top, and now come back at the end of this, and I'm going to make a circle. Hold the shift key so you don't distort the circle. Click V to access your move tool to move this circle wherever you want. And I'm going to go ahead and choose first the trim path option. Once again, you open it up, you keyframe it, change the first keyframe to 0. Move to a different place in time, change the end keyframe to 100. Another thing that you could do to make it a little more interesting, if you open up the stroke option, you can see the width is 25. So I can simply put maybe 10. And then maybe as it moves to like the other keyframe, maybe it goes to 30, so it thickens up. So and I'm going to actually move that. You can just click over the layer and move it back when you see these arrows, so they're not overlapping. And I have another option here under the stroke. If I click the dash, you could see that if I click the plus, I actually get dashes, and I could make the dashes thicker or thinner. Again, I could animate them depending on how I want. You know, I can click on my arrow key click on the dashes, maybe starts with like 1, and then as you move to a different place, like somewhere here, you can do maybe 50 or something like that. I mean, just want to play around with these. Actually, I'm gonna go back here to my dash. 50, go back again on the arrow key. It says 2. Maybe I'll just do one that's just 0, because I want it to just draw first before it gets into the dashes. You know, just a couple of seconds of it just being solid. And then so that looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna add another attribute here, and that's the preset. The wiggle tool is already like an animated engine built in. So if I let that go, you could see that I already have like a lot of wiggle options here. So I'm gonna just click off that. So I'm gonna go ahead and if I just want to base it on the default wiggle, I can just, you know, I don't know, just play around with these settings, and now you can kind of see how it's affecting the actual animation, and it's just gonna keep playing. And what I could do, I can just sort of manipulate these settings, the wiggle settings, make them bigger, make them smaller, and so on. So you can kind of create some really interesting animations based on you know, manipulating these different settings. And then if I just wanted to kind of stop at the end, I can just go back and just do 0, 0. So 0, 0 means no movement. So, and if I want again to start with no wiggle, you just do 0, 0. So, and then you kind of, I think you can just move it. I'm gonna copy this, move it maybe from this point on. So I have this. Actually, I'm gonna move that a little bit more. Okay, so I have a couple of animations here. This one's also about, let me see here. So about 5 seconds. So let's say now I want to combine these two together. I make a new composition. If you click on this option, you can get the editing window for your composition. I'm going to change this to 10, and I'll delete that one. No comp. And I'm going to drag, oh, I think this one, let's see here, I think I deleted the wrong one. Seconds. Okay, so and then I have these two. You just drag it in there, and now you can see you have this one and you have this other. Yeah, just move that. So if you hold the shift or command right bracket, you actually can move the layers up and down. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the zigzag first, and then do the wiggle. You can actually move that back. Okay, so very good. So now if I want to go back to this particular comp, if I double click it, it'll allow me to go back to it. And let's say I want to modify certain keyframes, I can go ahead and do that. So I think this is extra. I'm gonna delete it. So my final, oops, actually I think I deleted the wrong one. And now I'm just gonna, this is the correct one. So this is the one that if you click it, you can see the options has 10 seconds, and I've combined the two comps within this particular composition. So and if you were to add more, let's say you want to add another comp, maybe another maybe I'll show you how to convert text into shape layer. So I'm going to just make a new composition, shape layer to text, or text to shape layer. And make sure this is 5 seconds. I'm gonna go layer new text, and text to shape layer. I can just drop the size a little bit. Make sure you just highlight it before you change. And one of the other things that's really cool, in let's say you have your text and you want to kind of experiment and find other font faces. If you double click your text so it's all highlighted, and if you go to your drop down menu, and if you choose the arrow key, up and down arrow key, it'll go through all the different font faces. So you wouldn't have to manually do it. You can just go through them and pick the one that you feel is most appropriate for your website. So I'm just gonna use, I mean, this is fine for the purpose of what we're doing here. So let's say you have your text. If you choose layer, create, you can choose shape from text. You can also use mask, but for now we're just going to focus on shapes. And now I have a shape based on my text, and which means that I can, if I open it up, I have all of these options that all these add-on options available to me. So if I, let's say I can choose wiggle path, and choose the V, and then you can see that it's going to wiggle, and I can again make it wiggle more or make it wiggle less. I can add more details. And you can just go ahead and add other attributes. You could do trim path, and then again, remember, you want to make sure you're in the beginning of your time frame. The beginning and starting of your keyframe should be 0, 0, and then you want to go to wherever you want your text to fully appear. Let's say here you want to change the end to 100, and make sure the trim multiple shapes is set to individually. If I come back here, you can see that it basically draws the text, and I can, let's say, go back to my wiggle, use the arrow key to navigate between your text. I'm gonna go ahead and choose these keyframe, these three options, and maybe then after this part I'm going to increase the speed, and then I'm going to maybe just increase the detail a little bit more and increase the size a little bit more, just to kind of make it a little different. Maybe if I wanted to have a slower transition, I'll just space out the two keyframes. And again, you can always go back to your options, and you know, if there's certain things you want to have more or less of, you can just change those in these settings. And I'm gonna add one more add-on. This time I'm gonna choose twist, and you kind of see it sort of twists your letters. You know, let's say if you want to have like a dancing kind of a movement, I'll just do a little bit. And one last one. And if you want to move, let's say you did something and you're not happy with it, you can simply click on it and delete it. And I'm going to go ahead and just open up my wiggle path again, and I'm kind of happy with this movement, but this one is moving too fast. So I'm going to go ahead and actually get rid of these, and if I want these keyframes, I can just move it, drag over them and move them to wherever I want. Maybe I'll just move it to the very end.